Hi, it's Game Nerdigy here. In this video, we will look at frame generation and its effects on latency. This is part 3 of a 3-part series where we explore the impact of different settings on latency in games. So buckle up and I hope you learned something today. Frame generation is a technology which inserts fake frames in your game to give you a much smoother feel and appearance. It is somewhat of a controversial feature with two main criticisms. Firstly, the fake frames can be seen at times when you record and replay the game in slow motion. Secondly, it introduces system latency. For the purpose of this video, I am going to ignore the visual criticism as no one plays their game on slow motion, and as someone who has used frame generation for 100 plus hours over several games, I personally have not noticed a fake frame. So I don't think it's a valid criticism of the technology. Therefore, we will only take a look at the effect of frame generation on latency. I will now share my settings with you so you can run these same tests at home. To ensure that we are looking at only the impact of frame generation, I will change the settings of the games to their maximum possible. So when we compare the before and after, then we know the only difference between the two settings is that frame generation is now turned on. I will be using the 1440p resolution, as this is my current monitor's native resolution. I could have used DSR factors to get a 4K resolution, but not every game I will be testing is able to use DSR factors, and I'd like to keep the results consistent so we can take a look at the average across the games tested. Let's take a look at the results. At the top left hand side, in the third row, when counting from left, the second number is average FPS, and the third number are the 1% lows, which represent the lowest dips in FPS. We track 1% lows because the farther away this number is from average FPS, the more stuttering we will encounter. We want this number to rise as well as the average, otherwise we will see stuttering, defeating the purpose of a setting which is supposed to make the game look smoother. On the top right hand side, in the second row, we can see the current latency. That is, the delay between your button press and the action coming out. Remember, as mentioned in the first video, this is not the total delay between your button click and action. This is only the delay caused by the graphics rendering hardware. As we can see in Cyberpunk 2077, there's a 64% increase in average FPS, a 45% increase in 1% lows, and a 53% increase in latency. Keeping in mind, an increase in latency is a bad thing. It's the same as playing a game online and getting a 53% increased ping. In Horizon Forbidden West, there is a 43% increase in average FPS, a 46% increase in 1% lows, and a 56% increase in latency. In Ghost of Tsushima, we have a 45% increase in average FPS, a 37% increase in 1% lows, and a 43% increase in latency. And lastly, in Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, we see a 55% increase in average FPS, a 64% increase in 1% lows, and a 32% increase in latency. To make better sense of these results, let's take a look at them another way. Here we have all 4 of the results plotted on a graph with a 4-game average showing at the top. The first thing I'd like to point out is that Cyberpunk 2077 is one of the first games to get frame generation, and the other 3 games we have tested are quite recent, 2024 releases. So it seems that the technology is getting better as time goes on. We can also see that on average, between the 4 games, we received an increase of 57.3 average FPS, an increase of 43.5 FPS on 1% lows, and lastly, a 9.9 millisecond increase in latency. So based on these results, is frame generation worth it? In my opinion, the answer is yes. A 10 millisecond increase in delay, while a little noticeable, is actually largely ignorable. In single player games especially, that is. Another way to look at these results is to ask yourself the question, if your ping in your favorite online game rose by 10, would you notice? By answering this question, you can determine if frame generation is right for you. As we have discovered in previous videos, 144 FPS and locking your FPS to 1% lows are the optimal settings for perceived smoothness and latency. So I would not bother with frame generation in games where I'm already receiving close to 144 FPS and 1% lows. I hope you have enjoyed this video and learned from it. I would highly recommend you watch part 1 and 2 to get a more complete picture of this topic. And lastly, please like and subscribe as it gives me encouragement to keep making more of these videos. Thank you for your time.